Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to Everest week here on the Guerin Report. Great to have your company as we roll into a huge weekend of racing, and the final field is out for the $20 million richest turf race in the world. Mazu joins all these horses, and now into the race we head on Saturday. Massive previews coming up on trackside this week. But we went to Sydney to talk to the man who invented the Everest, one of the greats of world racing, Peter V'landys. And we started off by asking him what excites him about Everest Week.
Oh, there's just so much to do on Everest Week, so you don't really get time to think about it. But look, what excites me the most about this race is the fact that it's appealed to the younger generation, to the under 35s. Racing has picked up a new level of customers, and what's happened is the Everest has been able to bring those people back during the year. So it's not just about the Everest. They've come back week in, week out, and when I first started in racing, I'd look out to into the crowd and you would see a demographic of over 55, 60. And now I look out and it's a demographic of between 18 and 30, and you still got your mixture of 55s, but it's a complete new audience. And racing is the generational sport at the moment. You ask university students where they want to go on a weekend, they all say racing. So we're on a high, and the Everest has had a lot to do with that.
Why is that? I mean, there's plenty of other races that could attract people. Why is the Everest, in your belief, resonated so much with the younger audience?
Look, I think a young person and the different generations don't want to do what their parents do. Their parents have always had these traditional races, but they wanted a race of their own, their generational race. So I had to find a race that they could call their own, that was their race, and the Everest was that race. It was their race, it's their generational race, because when parents went on Facebook, kids went on Snapchat, now they're going on TikTok. When parents bought Apple iPhones, the kids didn't want Apple iPhones. They don't want to do what their parents do. So it was a horrifying thought that you're on Facebook with your parent. Well, it's the same thing applies with sport. The younger generation want their generational event, and the Everest is that.
Some people would say, how does a man of our age know these things? Is that just observation?
Look, you've got to do research and analysis, etc., and it comes with experience. I learned a lot in harness racing with the Miracle Mile, how to promote it and how to get publicity, etc. And you apply that experience throughout your career. And I knew from some of the research I had done, the perfect example is Kodak. And I always use this story where they were the biggest film providers in the world. There was no bigger than, and this guy come in all excited and he said, "Boss, I've got a digital camera." And the guy says, "Are you nuts? We've got the monopoly on film. Why would we want instant, and destroy our business?" They didn't go with a digital camera. Years later, someone else went with a digital camera. Now Kodak went into receivership, so they were no longer. So you've got to keep up with the time. You've got to keep up with progress and innovation, etc. So the research that I saw was that they don't want to do what their parents do. So I had to find something that was different, bold, brash, and the Everest was that.
I know you've had 1,000 conversations about the Everest, but one thing that fascinates me is the genesis of anything big. When was the first time you remember actually thinking, we should have a really big slot race?
I was talking to one of the major editors of the newspaper here in Sydney, and I said, "Mate, I'm sick of being in the back pages of the newspaper. How do we get to the front pages of the newspaper? How do we attract a different audience than just your normal sport?" And he said, "Mate, you need something that's going to be $10 million plus in prize money. If you don't have something $10 million plus, it's not going to capture the imagination. It's not going to capture any editor. You need something new." So at that stage, we didn't have budget to have a $10 million race. So I thought to myself, well, geez, how do I get 10 million? And then I saw the Pegasus in the United States, and it was brought to me by a gentleman called John Rouse. He said, "Have you seen this slot race in America?" And they're going to be paying, nearly $20 million. So I looked at the concept, and the first thing that came to my mind was the Miracle Mile. This race could be the most publicised race 12 months of the year, because you've got a slot owner looking for a horse. There's always going to be differences of opinion, similar to what the Miracle Mile selection was. So what appealed to me was the concept that it would generate publicity, and also was able to get my $10 million, because the majority of the prize money was going to come from the slot owners. So not only did I have the race that the editor wanted, I had a race that was going to get publicity, plus it was new and to appeal to the younger generation. And that's how it started. So, and then we looked at the distances. What distances do we go? And I looked at all the weaknesses of the Pegasus. The Pegasus was a 12 months, so we made it a minimum of 3 years. If you wanted a slot, you'd have to go 3 years. And then you have to then renew 2 years in advance for the next time. So that guaranteed its future. So you learn from mistakes other people made, and we learned a lot from the Pegasus. And when we looked at the distance, Australia is renowned for its sprinters. When you go to Ascot, who's won the races over there? It's been Takeover, Target, and Chazor, and Black Caviar, all sprinters. And Alfusi just won a big race over in Europe. So we're very good at sprinting. So naturally, we made it 1,200 metres to have the best of the horses in the world.
It all sounds very easy now, as the Everest has become a $20 million race, but talking to those close to you, it wasn't quite so easy to get off the ground. I believe 2 or 3 of the initial sponsors or potential slot holders you spoke to weren't interested. Was there a time when you had to be belligerent and say, no, we're going to do this and I'll keep going until we get this done?
Well, they don't call me the bulldozer for nothing. So,
look, I wasn't going to mention that.
But look, there was 4 slot owners I thought were certainties. I thought we'll get them, and we really only need 8 more. We know that. And when I went to see the 4, every single one of them said no. And I thought to myself, geez, we're in trouble here, and how are we going to get the 12? But perseverance, we got the 12. And
did you ever think to yourself, I can't pull this off?
Look, I never give up, so it's a bit. It crossed in my mind that we weren't going to get the 12, and what was Plan B, but once we started rolling them out, they went pretty quickly, and the good thing about it is most of the slot owners are still there. The majority have gone through the last 9 years with us, and we gave them a lifetime option. So basically, if you went with us at that particular point in time, you had that option for life, and then you lose it once you don't renew. And each one of them, and as I said, I think there's only 2 from my memory, or 3, that haven't gone the whole distance.
I want to talk about administration in racing. You are clearly seen as the most successful administrator, probably in Southern Hemisphere history, maybe alongside Winfred in world racing history. Some people would say you are all-powerful in New South Wales racing. Is there a reality that one person driving the ideas of others can get more done than ruling by committee? And I'm not talking just racing, any other business, the NRL, because sometimes I feel ruling by committee can make things slow down too much.
It depends on the committee. If you've got a very high-powered board, people that are business people, they can see the ideas. They can see what you're going to achieve. And if I didn't have the boards that I had, we probably wouldn't have got off the ground, to be quite frank with you, because they had to see the vision. They had to see what we were trying to do, because it was a risk. It was a gamble. It wasn't just an easy thing to do. And that's one good thing about Racing New South Wales, is that it's an independent board. It's not made up of participant groups. It's not made up of representatives of people. It's an independent board. And the good thing about that, it brings you some pretty good business minds, some pretty good commercial operators, and they saw immediately this concept. And so yes, look, if you've got committees that are made up of participant groups, you're going to get nowhere, because they all look at it through the lens of their own self-interest.
You mean, for example, clubs, breeders, owners groups, all look at it for what their members would want?
Correct. And that's a problem with racing, in my view, is that because I've been here so long, I've been through different types of corporate governance boards, and one of them was that where the participants nominated them and they were put in place. So you had 2 from the metropolitan clubs, 1 from country clubs, 1 from provincial clubs, 1 from jockeys and trainers, etc. And what I found there, it was hard to work with, because they all, as much as they hate to say it, were looking after sexual interests. They weren't looking as the industry as a whole. They were looking after, what do jockeys want, what do trainers want, what do owners want, what do breeders want. Well, then there was a mixture of like a beating eggs. So when it did change to an independent board, a board of people that aren't representative, it was a lot easier to navigate.
More logical?
More logical, because they look at it through the industry as a whole, and that's important. You've got to look at the industry as a whole. It's the same in rugby league. is it's an independent board, and they look at the game as a whole. They look at it, from pathways to the elite level. You just can't look at it in one particular self-interest group.
Peter, you and your boards pulled off what many people consider a modern miracle by keeping New South Wales racing and the NRL going during COVID. How did you pull that off?
Look, when I say I was lucky, I might have been unlucky, because I was here for equine influenza. And with equine influenza, I learned all about biosecurity measures, what you have to do to ensure that any disease doesn't spread. So COVID was really the human version of the equine influenza. So the first thing I did was introduce all these biosecurity measures to make sure that the disease was kept away from our race courses. And we were the first to have all these different tests, etc. So that no one could get into the race courses without doing the test. And as soon as they were positive, they were sent home. And so we had a really solid system throughout New South Wales. But that was from the learnings of equine influenza. And those biosecurity measures were then applied to the NRL. They were applied to everything that I was involved with anyway. And racing did not stop, and rugby league was the first to come back. So from the learnings of equine influenza.
We are suspending the season. We are going to put a time period to the suspension. We are going to look at every available option to us in the next week or so as to how we can recommence the season, be it in other areas, be it in northern Queensland. All the options are still on the table.
That aside, though, you still need the approval of government and state government to maintain these things. So is this a lesson to other racing jurisdictions, Peter, that the importance of having the ears of the people, the corridors of power? Because no matter how much biosecurity you put in place, if they weren't going to let you back in, you weren't getting back in.
You're spot on, Michael. You're 100% right. Because we knew it would work, but you had to make the decision makers know that it would work. So it wasn't just us having the ability to do it. It was convincing those in the corridors of power that we could do it. And that's one thing I think a CEO needs. A CEO needs to have relationships. If you don't have relationships with people and major decision makers, you're not a good CEO. What I've done over the years is I've harvested, these relationships, and you might only ring them once or twice. But I get to know them, get to know who they are, either being media, being politicians, being premiers, and I've been very fortunate that I've met most of the premiers, I've met most of the prime ministers, I've met most of the media. So I've got that relationship. So, and when it came COVID, I needed every relationship because there was more hurdles put in front of me than I've ever had in my career to be able to, one, to continue racing, and two, to get the NRL back. And if it wasn't for those people that I knew for a long period of time and decision makers who trusted me, and I never call upon them, every week. You call upon them when it's absolutely necessary, when you need their help and you need to get things done, and then they trust you. And I had a lot of trust during COVID with these decision makers, and I think that certainly assisted me greatly.
I say this next question with total respect for the importance of the racing pattern, but racing people make a big hullabaloo about races being Group 1s or whatever they may be. And now the Everest obviously is, but does that change Saturday? Does anybody there on Saturday really care if it's a Group 1?
Look, I always said that the Everest was going to be a big race if it was Group 1 or Group 33. It didn't matter because your general public, the customer that you're trying to get through the gate, especially 18 to 35-year-olds, they don't know what a Group 1 is. The Group 1 and the pattern system is really embedded into the participant groups, and especially the breeders. And it's their black type or their catalogues, and I respect all that. But it has gone a little bit different over the last few years because you need to be a Group 1 race to be in the world pool, which if you want to generate additional revenue internationally, you've got to be in the world pool. And that's a great initiative of Winfred's to have that. And, the Everest alone will probably generate an additional $1 or $2 million in revenue, net revenue, for the Australian Turf Club, because they get that direct. So, and that needs to be a Group 1 race. So it's important for us commercially now that we do have those Group 1s, but the problem with the pattern is it doesn't reward innovation. It pretty well keeps a monopoly. And it's very important never to lose sight of innovation. Everywhere around the world at the moment, racing's not travelling very well. In some of the major jurisdictions, it's actually struggling. And unless you innovate, unless you do things different, you're going to fail. And the pattern is great. Look, I understand that with the breeders, but you've got to enable competition. So, you know, just because it was a Group 1 race 3 years ago, if it doesn't reach the classified 115 that you're supposed to get on the, you know, each year for 3 years, well, it should be downgraded. But no one likes their races to be downgraded. So it makes it hard for a new race to come in because they want so many Group 1s and so many Group 2s. And the thing with the pattern, which I was taught, was you're supposed to start with a listed race, go to a Group 3, go to a Group 2, and then there's one grand final, which is a Group 1. But in Australia, like it or not, you start with Group 1s. You start with, you know, so what is the grand final? So realistically, there is no pattern as such. There is black type races that carry Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, but to say there's a pattern is a nonsense.
You mentioned Whirlpool, and Ka Ying Rising is in Sydney for this week. How big would it be for this race to have a truly international raider actually come and win it? Because people love it in Australia, they love it in New Zealand now, but this could start a snowball effect which has enormous revenue gains.
Look, especially from Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is a major market for wagering revenue, and you know a lot of that Whirlpool comes from Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is doing all these jurisdictions a favour by putting its customers to them. You know that's realistically, and that's the genius of Winfred. You know that he's been able to do that, and it's going to happen here. I think this will probably be the biggest turnover race in the history of Australia, purely because of the interest out of Hong Kong. So not only are you getting international interest, but you're going to get international revenue, and that's just going to keep you know, increasing the prize money on other races. People
back home in New Zealand will be watching this, and I've had this sentence so many times. They should just go get Volandis. They should get Peter Volandis to move to New Zealand. I know you're not going to do that.
No, you know the irony was that before I joined Racing New South Wales, I was also appointed as the CEO of the New Zealand tab, and they made me an offer here at Racing New South Wales, which I couldn't refuse, and then I had to decline the New Zealand tab job. So I could have been in New Zealand some 20-something years ago. That's the irony of it.
I think you did okay. What advice then would you give our administrators back home in New Zealand? Because it's a really pivotal time for us, and things have gone ahead enormously, but there's work to be done. So as much as you understand what's going on in New Zealand, what advice would you have for us?
I think don't be complacent. You know, the jurisdictions that have failed throughout the world think just because you've got a race course and you've got horses and you've got everything, people are going to come. They're not. You need to make it attractive to that next generation, to the next people, and to the existing customers. You need to make it, you know, an event, make it an entertainment type situation, and that's what we did with the Everest. That's what we've done with the Golden Eagle and a few of those new races. You've got to be innovative. You've got to look at the future, because the future comes very quickly, and that's what I've noticed is that you plan for 3 years and 3 years are gone like that. So I plan for 20 years. You don't plan for short term. You've got to plan for long term, and back yourself. If you've got some idea, don't give up. You know, sell it, and don't be scared to try new things, because if you don't try new things, you will fail, and you know you'll end up like, you know, everywhere else in the world. And the other thing that I think all us racing administrators have got to be well aware of is animal welfare, and making sure that we keep up with the community expectation of us on how we treat our horses. And we've done a lot of work here in New South Wales. I think we've got one of the best animal welfare systems in the world, where we rehome every horse. We do not allow horses to go to knackeries. We don't allow them to go to abattoirs. They must be rehomed. We put 5 or 6 vets on now that go and look at the horse 12 months later to see that it's properly homed, that it's getting proper nutrition. We have minimum standards, and if someone does the wrong thing, we place them on a forfeits list that you can never get a retired racehorse. But the thing that I'm finding exciting is the Equimeetings, again, a new venture, and it's $1 million worth of prize money that's going to go to equestrian pursuits, but with retired racehorses. And we've just finished a 4-day carnival, because normally in the equestrian events you run for $30. We're offering events for $30,000, and it's over $1 million in prize money. So that's guaranteed all these retired racehorses another life in the equestrian world. And they're the sort of things you've got to do. You've got to look outside the square and look at the problem, analyse it, and find a solution, because there's solutions there if you try hard enough.
maybe you've answered this, but maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing racing, not only now, but say in 5 years' time?
Relevance, are you going to stay? Look, like it or not, racing and all sport is in the entertainment industry. Are you going to stay relevant in the entertainment industry? Because people have X amount of disposable income and they're going to spend it in some type of entertainment. It be going to rugby league, be going to racing, be going to the cinemas, be playing games at home look, I've got my children who are in the teens, and they're asphyxiated to their computers playing, Xbox and on all those different games.
I think it's called Minecraft.
Yeah, that's one of them.
I think so, but I don't know either.
And roadblocks
But you can't have an Everest every week. So how do you stay relevant 52 weeks a year, or is that impossible and you try and hook them in with an Everest and hope that it extrapolates out?
That's exactly what we do. Is we hook them with a major event, and what we find is that they come back other weeks. Give them a good time. Get them to the racecourse. Even if you convert, 20% of them, that's a big win. Even if you convert 10% of them to come in, week out, or have a small bet each week with a wagering operator, that's a win for us. So first off, you need to get them there. You need to show them how good racing is, how entertaining it is. Once that happens, you've converted that customer. The irony was, before the Everest, 40% of the Victorian Spring Carnival came from New South Wales. 40% of our crowd on Everest comes from Victoria. So it's done a complete reversal, and they're all young people. I had an administrator that worked in Racing Australia who had a son and never took an interest in racing whatsoever. He just had zero interest. When he turned 18, he said to his son, "What would you like to do?" He said, "Dad, do you mind taking me to the Everest?" So, you could see straight away that it's attracted that next generation of people.
On a personal note, we, unluckily for both of us perhaps, have known each other for 35 years. You've been the boss at Racing New South Wales for 21. You're the chairman of Australian Rugby League, which is a massive business in itself. Do you ever get sick of the aggro, the constant fights? I can only imagine how many arguments, fires you have to put out. Do you ever think to yourself, Peter, I've earned a break from all this?
Oh, you think about that all the time. So what I do is...
So what are you still doing here?
So look, because what I do, it's probably a dumb way I do it, is at the end of the year, come January, I take most of that off, at least 3 weeks of it, and I sit and recharge my batteries, and then that's when I make the decision what I'm doing the following year. I don't do it before then. And there's been times throughout this year where you say to yourself, why am I doing this? What, both jobs, etc. Because it's very unappreciative. Even though no matter how successful you make it or how much money you make people, their self-interest comes first. And that's the problem with everything that in sport, self-interest is king. If you're a particular segment of an industry, you want to see that segment. You don't look at it as a whole. And and I'm not criticising racing, because racing has got a lot of self-interest. But it's the same in rugby league. It's the same in anything you do. Self-interest is first. And naturally, if you do something they don't like, they attack you. And the hardest part of my job as a sports administrator is trying to balance it amongst all participant groups, amongst everybody.
Do the attacks hurt? If someone attacks Peter V'landys on social media or a column in the paper, does it actually affect you at all?
It depends who it is. If it's just your normal, troll that goes and just bags everything, you don't worry too much about it. But sometimes when it's people that you know or respect, yeah, it does hurt you, because you're trying your hardest. You can criticise me all you like, but the thing is, what I can guarantee is I'm trying my hardest. I'm not doing it to hurt anyone. I'm not doing it to to be revengeful or anything like that. I just do it because I believe in it. And people sometimes don't see your vision. Like there was a lot of people that fought the Everest, a lot of people. But I knew it was the right thing to do, and you just keep moving forward. But no, look, everyone's human. I always think of the Merchant of Venice. If you prick me, do I not bleed? If you tickle me, do I not laugh? Because everyone's human at the end of the day.
So you make your decisions in January.
Yep.
You sit down for 3 weeks and you talk to Mrs. V'landys and say, are you keen to go around another year?
Well, she wants me to go round and round again as long as I can, because she doesn't want
keep you out of the place.
She keep me out of the place so she doesn't affect her social life. Yeah, look, we have a discussion amongst the family, and they play a crucial part. For me, life's about my family, my children and my wife, so whatever they say, I will do, because that's everything to me. You do these things to give them the quality of life, But you need to give them the attention as well. And that's one thing I've tried to balance very carefully, is giving the attention to the family as much as I give my job. So.
All right, you understand betting, you understand betting markets. How many more Januaries do you think we get out of Peter V'landys?
Look, I'm not sure. This one's probably going to be the hardest January, I think, because it's not easy to do both.
Okay, which one would you give up first?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Because they're both as hard as each other.
Are you trying to tell me that rugby league? Because I've known you in racing for such a long time, and I love league, and lots of us love league, but surely that can't be as ingrained in your DNA as racing is.
Look, the reason I love rugby league is because when I was a kid, I migrated over from Greece as a 4-year-old, and my parents weren't very wealthy, so they actually took me to school a year early at 4. So I used to get bashed senseless in the playground by the bullies, etc., and called a wog and everything, and I hated school. I cried my eyes out. I didn't want to go to school. And so, like anything else, I analysed it. I thought, well, how the hell do I do it so I don't get bashed up anymore? And I found the sport of rugby league. Everyone loved rugby league. So I thought to myself, I'll have to become good at rugby league. So I tried my hardest to be a good rugby league player, and I got in with the Aussie kids, because then I was one of them because I was playing rugby league. So when I was approached to go on the commission, I thought I had a debt to the sport, because it got me out of my troubles as a kid, and I wanted to make sure that that I could pay back to it what it gave me, and to make sure that migrant kids that are coming through now, that sport can unite people. And that's one thing I love about rugby league, is it does unite people. It brings people together that normally don't come together. You only have to look at some of the some of our teams that have got Middle Eastern, etc., and Asians, and it's great to see how we all gel for sport. So rugby league's still important to me, and there's some unfinished business there. We've got the broadcast rights to do. We've got Papua New Guinea coming into the competition, and we've got the Perth Bears. So there's still a bit to do there. But I've got a very good CEO in Andrew Abdo. He's one of the most brilliant guys you could possibly get. And there's a cemetery full of people that thought they couldn't be replaced. So I do come to a reality that one day someone else has got to do it.
I'll ask you a yes/no question to end this, and thank you for joining us on the Guerin Report during Everest week. Will Peter V'landys still have the keys to this building on Druitt Street, Racing New South Wales, in 5 years' time?
No, definitely not 5 years' time. No, I think that's probably too far out. But as I said, it's year on year. We'll just see how many more years there is. But I think 5 would probably be too many.
Enjoy the Everest.
Thank you very much. Good on you, mate.
Remarkable to think how close Peter V'landys came to running the New Zealand TAB, and great to get those insights about what rugby league and racing mean to him and what the future may hold. We thank Peter and wish everybody involved in the Everest a great week. We have huge racing here. Of course, the Livermore meeting at Ellerslie will kick off the greatest day on the punt. Caulfield Cup coming out of Melbourne, and then rolling into some harness racing and even into Quipco Champions Day over there at Ascot. Next week on the Guerin Report at 8 p.m. on Monday, another huge show with another and very different one of the giants of world racing. We go to Yulong to find out what goes on and what's behind those famous green and white colours as they count down to trying to go back-to-back in the Cox Plate. Yulong on the Guerin Report next Monday at 8 p.m.